It started a year after the divorce. She was the one who ended it. I told myself I accepted that, but the truth is, I didn't. I told myself I forgave her for what she did, but that wasn't true either. The night she called, her name on my phone looked unfamiliar, like a word I used to know but had forgotten how to pronounce. Her message was short, just that she wanted to talk. I thought that meant something. I thought it meant maybe she regretted things, or maybe she missed me. It didn't mean that. We met for coffee 2 days later, in the same cafe where we had signed the first papers for the separation. She chose that place. I didn't comment on it. She smiled when I came in, the same way she used to smile when she didn't want to argue. Her smile was a form of politeness, like a doorman tipping his hat. We sat near the window. She asked about my work, my health, my sister. I asked about the kids. She said they were fine. The conversation was smooth, neutral, and empty. I could tell she had rehearsed it. I wanted to reach across the table, take her hand, or maybe just brush a crumb off her sleeve, something small, harmless. But she kept her hands folded under the table, one thumb pressing against the other. She always did that when she wanted to leave. I asked if she wanted to get dinner sometime, maybe try that new place near the river. She said, softly, "I don't think that's a good idea." I nodded, pretending I agreed. I didn't. I said I'd walk her to her car. She said that wasn't necessary. I did anyway. The wind was sharp, and she tucked her chin into her coat. She always hated the cold. When we reached her car, she hesitated. I thought she might turn around. She didn't. She said goodnight, and drove off. I stood there until her taillights disappeared. That became a pattern. Every few weeks, I'd text her something small, something that didn't seem loaded. A song I thought she'd like. A photo of the kids when they were younger. A memory, casual, harmless. She always responded politely, sometimes even warmly, but never with invitation. I kept telling myself I just wanted to stay connected, for the kids, for closure, for friendship. But each time she wrote back, her sentences felt like a door half open, and I kept trying to push it wider. Once, I went by her apartment to drop off some old books that had been hers. I didn't call first. She opened the door in her house clothes, surprised, not angry. She let me in. The apartment smelled different, cleaner, colder. There were new pictures on the wall. None of them included me. I handed her the box and stayed standing, waiting for her to offer me tea like she used to. She didn't. We talked a little, mostly about the kids again, about how our daughter had started painting, how our son wanted to move to Seattle. She smiled when she mentioned them. She didn't look at me when she smiled. I asked if she ever thought about the past. She said, sometimes, but I try not to. I asked if she was seeing anyone. She didn't answer for a moment, then said, "It's complicated." That word echoed in my head the whole drive home. I told myself she said it because she didn't want to hurt me. I told myself it meant she wasn't happy. I told myself a lot of things. I started finding reasons to be near her. I'd offer to fix things in her apartment, help with the car, pick up groceries. Sometimes she said yes, sometimes no. When she did let me come by, she always kept a certain distance, never rude, never cold, just restrained. The kind of politeness that hurts more than cruelty. She'd thank me for helping, smile, and close the door before I could say much else. Each time, I'd stand there in the hallway, waiting for a sound, her footsteps, a sigh, anything, but it was always just silence. I started to notice small things. When she wore her hair down, it meant she was relaxed. When she wore it tied back, it meant she was in control. She wore it tied back every time I saw her. Her eyes had changed too. Not in color, but in focus. They didn't search me anymore. They looked through me, like glass over a display. I found myself thinking about her gestures more than the conversations. The way she held her mug with both hands, even when it wasn't cold. The way she pressed her lips together before answering a question she didn't want to answer. I started memorizing those little movements without realizing it. I think I thought that if I understood her well enough, I could find the right combination of words, the right silence, to bring her back. I asked her once if she'd like to take a walk by the park, like we used to. She said she was busy. I asked again a week later, and she said she was tired. I asked again 2 weeks after that, and she said she didn't think we should keep meeting like this. Her voice was gentle, but there was steel underneath. I said I understood. I didn't. I went home and sat in the dark, replaying the conversation word for word, trying to find the spot where I went wrong. It became a habit, replaying things. Like a loop tape with one scratch you can't stop hearing. I told myself I wasn't obsessed. I told myself I was just trying to fix something broken. But late at night, when the house was quiet and the kids were asleep, I'd scroll through old photos of her. I noticed how her smile changed over the years, open at first, then smaller, tighter, finally gone. I wondered when exactly it disappeared. I kept thinking of one night before the divorce, when she came home late and said she'd been out with friends. I didn't ask which friends. I remember her perfume smelled different that night. I told myself it didn't matter. Maybe it started then, maybe earlier. I don't know. I think what hurt most was how easily she'd erased me. Not just from her home, but from her gestures, her language, her life. Even her laughter had changed tempo. I noticed it when she spoke to her daughter on the phone. Softer, lighter, as if joy had found its way back but left me behind. Once, after dropping off our son at her place, I stayed in the car for a while. I watched her through the window as she moved around the kitchen. She looked calm. She poured water into a glass, leaned on the counter, and stared into space for a moment. I wondered what she was thinking about, whether she ever thought of me at all. When she turned off the light, I drove away. I told myself it was the last time I'd linger like that. It wasn't. The rejections kept coming, small and polite. Each one cut a little deeper, but less sharply, like the dull edge of a knife that doesn't pierce but grinds. I stopped expecting her to say yes, but I kept asking anyway. Habit, hope, I don't know what word fits. There's a point when rejection stops feeling painful and starts feeling natural, like a rhythm you learn to breathe with. That's where I ended up. I stopped trying to change her mind. I just wanted to be near enough to feel her absence more clearly. I think that's what obsession is, not wanting someone, but wanting the space they leave behind, the quiet they take with them. When I told her once that I still thought about her, she said, "You shouldn't." Her tone wasn't cruel, just final. I nodded, pretending I agreed. I didn't. When she closed the door, I stood there again, as always, listening to the silence that followed. It sounded almost familiar now, almost comforting. Like the sound of something ending slowly, the way wood settles in the cold. I started noticing the small things she never said. It wasn't deliberate. At first, it was just curiosity, a dull ache of wondering where she'd gone, what she was doing, who she was with. I told myself it was normal. We were married for 20 years. I was just trying to understand what had changed. At first, I only watched from a distance, like someone glancing at a shadow without thinking it means anything. But it began to mean something. It wasn't so much the things she did, it was the way she did them. The small things, the ones that seemed so trivial. Like the way her clothes always smelled faintly of lavender now. I never remembered that scent from when we were together. It made her feel more distant. And the way she would order the same salad when we used to eat out. I knew she hated the dressing, but she still chose it every time, like it didn't matter. I wasn't looking for her, not exactly. I wasn't trying to find her life, piece by piece. But one day, when I was at the grocery store, I saw her there. She was standing in the produce aisle, picking out a head of lettuce. She didn't see me. I watched for a while. She always did that. I checked the leaves for freshness, turned them in her hands before deciding. She looked different somehow. She had lost weight, or maybe she just seemed smaller. Her posture was different too, more stiff. I don't know if it was because of age or if something else had changed. The sight of her there, in that moment, was strange. I wanted to walk over, to say something, but I didn't. Instead, I stood behind a display of cereal boxes, just far enough to watch her pick up a bottle of wine and study the label. She put it back, then took a different one. When she left, I followed. Not closely. Not so close to be obvious, but close enough to feel the thrum of her movements. I didn't need to know where she was going, but I followed anyway. There was no plan. I didn't know why I did it. It just felt like the thing I was supposed to do. Later, when I was home, I went online and found her Facebook page. I hadn't looked at it in months. Her profile picture had changed. She was smiling with someone I didn't recognize. His arm was around her waist. I stared at that picture for longer than I should have. Her smile wasn't forced, but it wasn't the smile I remembered either. It was a new smile. I could tell it was a new smile. She'd made new friends. She had a new life, and that life was different from the one I used to be part of. I couldn't help but compare her then to the way she had been with me. There was a lightness in her now, a freedom. Or maybe it was just the absence of me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was always looking for her. It wasn't always intentional. It wasn't always like when I checked her social media or saw her at the store. Sometimes, I would just be driving somewhere, and I'd find myself turning down a street where I knew she used to live. I never stopped to look, but I'd drive slowly, pretending I wasn't trying to remember the way to her old place. One day, I found myself on the street outside her apartment complex. I told myself it was a mistake, that I hadn't meant to go that way, but I knew that wasn't true. I didn't park. I didn't stop the car, but I looked at the building, at the windows where I used to stand and wait for her to come home. I wondered what it would be like to see her there again, to see the life she had without me in it. That was the thing, I didn't want her back. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to be with her, but I couldn't let go of the idea of what she was doing now, of who she was becoming. It was like she was a picture I couldn't stop drawing. Each time, the lines would shift just slightly, the details would change, but the image never quite felt real. It was like a portrait of someone who wasn't quite there, someone who had slipped away and left a shadow in her place. The more I observed, the more I realized how little I knew about her life now. I knew her routines. I knew when she went grocery shopping, when she picked up the kids, when she went to work. But I didn't know what she was feeling, who she was talking to, how she passed the time when I wasn't around. I couldn't help but feel the smallest sting when I saw her at a party I hadn't been invited to, or when I found out she had gone on a trip without telling me. I would never confront her. I wouldn't even mention it. But I knew somehow that she didn't need me anymore. That was the most painful part. The knowing that she didn't need me. The emptiness that came with seeing her slip further and further away, like someone walking out the door and not bothering to look back. A few weeks later, I saw her at a coffee shop. She didn't see me this time either. She was with him, the man in the picture. They sat close, their knees almost touching. I watched from the far corner, my coffee growing cold. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see the way she laughed, how her hand rested on his arm as he spoke, the way she leaned into him when he made a joke. I wanted to look away, but I didn't. I watched until they got up to leave. She was still wearing the same jacket I had bought her for her birthday, but now it looked different. It wasn't mine anymore. She was someone else. I didn't know how much time passed after that. Days, maybe weeks. I stopped looking for her, at least not as intensely. I stopped following her patterns, stopped checking her profile every night. But there was a part of me that couldn't help but wait. I would hear her voice in the distance sometimes, like a half-remembered song. I would catch a glimpse of her in a crowded street, and my heart would skip for a moment, before I realized it wasn't her at all. She wasn't mine anymore, but I couldn't quite erase the space she left behind. It wasn't just the absence of her, though. It was everything she had become after me. Everything she was, without me, that I couldn't quite understand. The only thing I could feel now was the slow burn of curiosity, the endless wondering of who she was without me. I hadn't seen her in a while. I thought about her every day, but it wasn't the same anymore. Not the way it used to be. There were no more texts, no more random encounters. She had stopped responding to my messages months ago. At first, it had been a polite silence. Then it became an absence. I didn't mind it as much as I thought I would. It felt like the air had cleared, but there was something hollow about it. Something that left a space where I used to be. I still wondered about her. I still checked her Facebook, though less often. I didn't need to see her smile anymore. I didn't need to know who she was with. It wasn't that I had stopped caring. I just stopped needing to feel the burn of it. The curiosity wasn't a pain anymore. It was a quiet ache, like a muscle that had been overworked and was now starting to heal. The routine of it had become almost comforting. I could have lived in that silence forever. But sometimes, late at night, I would remember the way her hands used to feel in mine. The warmth of them, the way her fingers fit between mine. It was a small thing, but I could never forget it. The silence wasn't about forgetting her. It was about living with the absence of her. It wasn't painful, just strange. Like a place you once knew well, now gone. I was still living in the same house, though it felt different now, quieter, less crowded with memories. I hadn't taken down the pictures from the walls, but I didn't look at them anymore. They didn't hold the same weight. I hadn't spoken to the kids as much either. They were busy, doing their own things. I didn't mind. I was fine with the silence. The space between us felt more natural now. I stopped calling her. I stopped driving by her apartment. But sometimes, when the sun was setting and the house was still, I would wonder if she still thought about me. If she noticed the silence as much as I did. I didn't think I needed her anymore. But I also didn't know how to leave her completely. So, I just let the silence stretch and spoken, like a promise we'd made to each other without ever saying it. And one night, when I was sitting in my usual chair, there in the room heavy with its usual stillness, I saw her. It wasn't the same as before. There were no awkward attempts to get close. There was no longing, no ache. It was just her, walking past my window. She didn't know I was watching, but I could see her clearly. She was by herself, but she looked different. Her hair was down, and she was wearing the same coat from years ago, the one I used to like. She didn't stop, didn't look in my direction. She kept walking, her pace steady, without hesitation. She looked calm, at peace, like someone who knew exactly where she was going. And I knew, without any doubt, that she wasn't thinking of me. She was just moving through the world, the way she always had, with or without me in it. I wondered if I was supposed to feel something, regret, anger, relief, but I didn't feel any of those things. I just felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had moved on. Not because I wanted her to, but because it was inevitable. She had never needed me. She'd only needed a version of me that was always there. And now, she didn't need that version anymore. I didn't need her either. The silence between us was complete now. I wasn't sure if I had ever truly wanted her back, or if I had just wanted the chance to see what it would feel like to be with her again. I didn't know if I even missed her. I didn't miss the person she had been. I missed the feeling of being with someone who could never quite leave. But she had left, and I was still here, watching the space between us stretch further and further, until it was a distance neither of us could cross. And I didn't want to cross it. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I just felt the strange peace that comes with knowing something is over. I stayed in the chair for a while after she passed. I didn't need to follow her. I didn't need to know where she was going. I had already seen enough. I stayed in the silence, and for the first time in a long time, it felt real. I didn't feel like I was waiting for something anymore. I didn't feel like I was waiting for her. I didn't feel anything at all.